The best place to learn about working with text in Illustrator is character formatting. It is one of the core concepts, and even if you want to create a more complicated and advanced text effect, you would still start by doing the basic character formatting first. So let's start by the first thing that you will notice. When you use the Type tool, which is located here in the toolbar, you will find lots of additional options for it as well. That's when you right click on the Type tool. You will see that the Type tool is just one of many in this group, and we are going to explore most of these soon. But first, let's just concentrate on the primary Type tool. So if you just simply click with this tool on the artboard, it's going to automatically create a line type. You can also click and drag with this tool, but before you do that, you will have to either accept or cancel the current typing. The best thing to do is usually just press escape on the keyboard. That means you stop typing. So having the Type tool selected again with a shortcut T on the keyboard is the fastest way to get to it. You can, instead of just clicking, click and drag, which would define an area type. Now we will come back to this in the next video, because what I would like to concentrate on now is the line type that I just created here. So let's just do this once again. Type tool, click, and it creates a line type object, which we can also see here in Layers panel. Now notice that it automatically added lorem ipsum, these two words in, and it is using the last used font that I was working with, the one that I just prepared here above. Now once you have this text selected, of course you can change the wording. I'm just going to type in line type. And let's see first of all how we can change the font and the size of this text. So the best thing to do is to select the text if you want to change the font itself, and the font drop down or the font selector is up here. Now it has a lot of options, and first of all, of course, you can see all the fonts installed on your computer. You can see the most recently used fonts on top. And simply hovering over any of these options from this list already shows you a preview in the background, so it keeps updating the currently selected text. Let me just choose something basic like Myriad Pro for now, and we will come back to the font selector very soon. But what I would like to do is to increase the size of this text. So from the other drop down, I can increase the point size, maybe up to 48, and then immediately it increased the size. Now that is a great way to change the size of the text, but there is also a shortcut that you can use. It's Command Shift or Control Shift, comma, and full stop are ways of changing the size of your text. You can even hold these keys down, and then it keeps increasing or decreasing the text size. That's also useful, but there is another way. Also, if you switch to the selection tool and have your text selected, so it is an object like anything else that we've done before, and if you hold down the Shift key while using the black arrow or selection tool, you can drag one of the corners out, and with that you can also increase the size of your text. Now the only problem with this technique, although it's really fast and very convenient, that it's going to result these fractions, so it's not going to be an even number. So if that is a problem, of course you can always even it out by just simply clicking on up or down arrow, and then it resizes to the closest even number. If you want to change the font, you don't have to actually highlight the text. You can just have the object selected and then go up to the same drop down that we used before, and as you can see, even that is enough to change the type. Another very useful option from the options bar is the character drop down, which is actually the character panel. Now you can find that also from the window menu. If you go down all the way to type character, it will open up this panel which has all of these options that we need when we want to format our text on a character level. But to make sure you see all of these options, check in the panel menu that you have the options visible. So if it's hidden, then half of the panel is not showing. And also you can decide whether you want to show the touch type tool or not on the top. That's again an option. I normally have it turned on, but it is again up to you whether you want to see that here or not. That's again something we will be talking about in another video in this chapter. So what are all these options? The first one we've already seen, that's the font family selector. Within a font family, normally you have different styles for the same font or weights. So we have regular, and then we have black in this case with Lithos Pro. But after that, we have a lot of other options like the size, which we talked about already. But let's have a look at all the others here. So the next one is called kerning. Now, kerning is something I wouldn't change from the panel. It's actually something I would normally do while having the text selected. So as you can see with this text here, it looks a little bit strange that the Y is really close to the T, but is quite far away from the P. It almost feels like that's a separate word. Again, there might be a little bit too much space between the other letters as well. So if I want to make sure that it feels even, the text here, I want to then do a bit of custom kerning. So by double clicking anywhere within the text, I can get the cursor flashing, and that means now I can do some local adjustment for the spacing between these letters, and that's what kerning is about. So if I use Alt left and right arrows or Option left and right arrows on Mac, I can move them closer or further away, and notice how it's in the character panel as well as changing that number. So it is a visual balancing between the letters, the spacing between the letters, and I can adjust the spacing there as well, maybe something like that. A slightly more tighter looks a bit better. And if I want, I can do that even on a whole selection. So this whole word, I can use Alt left and right arrows if I want to get it tighter in there. And then once again, if I want just one particular part to go closer, I just put the cursor in there and then use the same shortcut. So we call this kerning, and we usually refer to it when you do it individually between letters. And you actually call it tracking when you select a whole part of your text. So that would be the next option here, tracking. And that is just a faster way to quickly increase the spacing evenly between all the letters. And you can also get them even tighter if you go into minus values for the tracking. Let me just set this back to maybe -10. The other very important feature is leading when you format characters. Now this is becoming important when you have multiple lines. Now, first of all, how do you break a line? Well, you simply have to press enter. So now I created 2 lines. So it's still the same one object, but now it's divided into 2 lines. And when I select these 2 lines, I can see that there is also an auto feature for leading, which is going to define the spacing between these 2 lines. Now I can change that and reduce it way below the automatic amount, or I can go again further up, and as you can see, it changes the distance between them, but they are still overlapping. Now, if I want to increase this value, I can also do it from the keyboard. This is Alt or Option up and down arrows, and you can even keep holding down the arrows, and that will keep adjusting the leading. So that is another very useful shortcut there. The following 2 options, scaling vertically and horizontally in this character panel, are almost like taboos, so I wouldn't touch them. Because what happens when you use them, let's say horizontal scaling, it actually stretches the characters that you selected. Now, you might want to use that in some cases where you want to achieve a bit more graphic look with your type, but most of the time I rather avoid stretching text. It's just something that really messes up the proportions of these letters, and this type of alteration on text can look easily very amateur. The next feature, called baseline shift, is again useful. That's something I use on a regular basis. And if I turn on my rulers, which is Command R or Control R, I can drag a guide down for both of my lines here, Just so you can see, these are the base lines. So every time you are typing, there will be this invisible line on which all of your characters are sitting. Now, if you want to break out a character from that and push it up or pull it down, then you use baseline shift. So let me select this letter here, and I can use the values here in the character panel, or I can use the shortcut Alt or Option Shift up and down arrows. So with that, I can alter the position of this character. It's quite similar to leading, but instead of moving the whole line, this can move individual characters up and down. And last but not least, you can even rotate characters. So that's the last option here, character rotation, which is quite unique. You don't really have this in the other Adobe applications. Here in Illustrator, you have a separate option for that as well, which is quite useful. So to summarize the terms that we've learned, kerning, tracking, baseline shift, and leading, you can think of these as either horizontal or vertical adjustments on type. And while kerning and baseline shift is usually used on certain characters or between certain characters, tracking and leading would usually apply on a bigger amount, either a whole line or several words or even sentences. And last but not least, we have case options here. But to see that, I'm going to actually change my font to something a bit more basic like Myriad Pro, because what the casing option can do is to change from lowercase to uppercase. And this is like a switch you can turn on and off. You can also use small caps. Then what you can also do is to select, let's say, just a letter and set it to superscript or subscript. Plus you also have the option to underline text or even to strike through. So that will add a dash along the text itself. So this was the character panel and the character formatting options that I wanted to show you in this video. In the next one, we are going to look at the next level, which is paragraph formatting.